Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We have one panel, additionally, with two people on it who want to speak to this issue, Michael White and Alan Sugarman. Alan Sugarman.
The top one has attachment, the others are just copies of the letter itself.
Is Alan not with us? Apparently not. So Michael will be the only speaker on this panel and the final speaker of the hearing. I think we have a 3-minute clock or so. Michael, you are free to begin.
Michael White, Citizens Defending Libraries. The NYPL did a presentation of this replacement of SIBL and Mid-Manhattan and the alterations to the 42nd Street Library last night for the public. They said at that presentation that they would answer questions that the public asked. Public asked, how many books were at SIBL? Not just the other day, but before the Central Library Plan was conceived. And we know that it was over 1 million. And similarly, how many books were at Mid-Manhattan back then versus how many were going to be in the new library? The NYPL would not answer that question. Whether they didn't know the answer or whether they were just unwilling to give the answer, each is objectionable and unfortunate. Another question was asked that they wouldn't answer. They were asked why Booz Allen Hamilton, the nation's top private spy agency working principally on surveillance for the U.S. government, was hired in connection with the dismantling of the libraries and this reorganization that's getting rid of books shortly before the Central Library Plan, and now this replacement was preceded, and we're seeing similar things around the rest of the city. And that was right after the NYPL board had been advised, according to its minutes, that the government was going to require the NYPL to, quote, re-engineer their internet service facilities to enhance law enforcement's ability to monitor and accept communications. So that was something else they wouldn't answer. These are critical, essential questions. You can ask these questions. I heard Councilman Gorodnick answer some questions that were not quite these questions about the number of the books, and I think he got more information, better answer than the public was given last night. But these questions have to be asked. There's a drastic reduction of books, and it results in the opportunity for surveillance. We also were told last night that the NYPL has stopped collecting science books. I mean, we have a whole library that's called the Science, Industry, and Business Library. And the reason was that they said, well, people can just go to the internet. Well, I know a lot of people who are studying climate science these days, and they're reading a lot of books. It's not available elsewhere. And what we need to address what is going to potentially destroy our planet, probably the greatest threat, is for our population to understand climate science and to have access to the science that could create solutions. We cannot be shrinking our libraries at this point.
Thank you, Michael, for your testimony. Obviously, you are a very regular contributor to our hearings, so I'm familiar with some of your positions. I only have one question, and I think Chair King has a question as well. The Booz Allen Hamilton concern, what exactly is your concern here? What are we concerned about? What are we alleging?
Well, one of the things we've given you, there's an addendum to the
Yes.
testimony that I've submitted, and you'll see that we have a resource page at Citizens Defending Libraries, which is links to many articles and excerpts about surveillance in libraries. So Booz was hired shortly after Connecticut librarians had won a fight against the Patriot Act and surveillance. But the changes that are being made in the libraries basically wind up being an end run around the kind of victory those Connecticut librarians won. The American Library Association has adopted resolutions pointing out to the importance of preserving the libraries as zones of privacy free from surveillance. And just last week issued 2 weeks ago, issued an advocacy alert on the subject. There's increased surveillance now with the adoption of Rule 41, which you may also have heard covered on the media this week.
Right, but you don't know for a fact that NYPL's work with Booz Allen is about snooping and spying and revealing proprietary information about library users.
I don't know for a fact, and I don't know that it's not. Now, the NYPL has not been willing to produce the contracts with Booz, and we have foiled the contracts with Booz and Company with the Brooklyn Public Library, and they have been unwilling to produce them. Right. Now, the United States government does 70% of its surveillance through private firms. Of that, 80% is with 5 firms. The top firms of those 5 firms is Booz Allen. Their principal work is surveillance for the federal government. Now, it may sound...
I will definitely, continue to work with NYPL, and but I'm pretty sure that Booz Allen does other things as well, and I'm also fairly sure that the New York Public Library, like all of our great libraries across the country, and as you know, I worked for one, and I'm very familiar with the Patriot Act. We are the place where everyone comes to feel safe. The New York Public Library, just like the Queens and Brooklyn Public Libraries, have hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of undocumented folks who could trust both the staff and the system to keep them safe. And I believe, and I just want to say this for the record, that the New York Public Library is committed to that. I know that our systems are committed to that. Our city is committed to that. So, I just think this is it's a very, very loaded allegation, and I don't know that in the absence of proof that somehow the NYPL is conspiring with Booz Hamilton to accomplish what you're saying is potentially being accomplished here is appropriate, particularly given the record that I think NYPL, its librarians, its staff, has in serving everyone regardless of status, and I think that's a well-earned reputation on the part of all 3 of our library systems.
These questions have been asked, and they're not being answered. That's the problem. Now, in terms of, I have not alleged that they are conspiring. I've raised the question. Now, you can say, is this a conspiracy? Well, maybe this is a conspiracy, and maybe it's not a conspiracy, but you don't want to pick and choose selectively in this day and age in terms of what's possible, in terms of what you are willing to consider as possible things that you have to be concerned about. And groups like the American Library Association tell us that we do need to be concerned about surveillance in libraries.
I hear what the ALA, of which I was a member, of course, when I worked for libraries, I understand their position on these issues very carefully. I think making the direct connection between sort of the ALA's overarching concerns about some of these issues and then to connect it to NYPL's work with Booz Hamilton, I think that's a stretch, and I think that's what's not really resonating with me. But I understand you have a position, and I just want to finish that point by stating that the body of work of this city's 3 public library systems, protecting and really being the first line of defense for every New Yorker, particularly for the undocumented, is, in my estimation, unchallengeable. And that commitment, I know, is shared by Tony and the two other library system heads. So you've stated your position, your concern. I understand it. I disagree with it, but it's been raised. I know Councilmember King has a question.
Good afternoon, and again, thank you for your testimony. Just a question. You sat here through the testimony of President Marks in the New York Public Library. Was there anything that you agree with what they were saying or what they were doing, what their plans are?
Of course, there are things that I agree with. I think that this plan is very expensive, and I think it's an expensive way of getting rid of SIBL. We do not, if you go to SIBL, which will be used very valuably as they're proposing during the transition phase, it is a very valuable resource. It was completed recently in 1996. It was considered a state-of-the-art library upon completion. In terms of technology, it is absolutely state-of-the-art in terms of supplying computers. I don't think we should be cavalierly getting rid of SIBL, and I don't understand why that is a proposal. I think that
so that's one thing you disagree with. That's one thing you disagree. I mean, that's one thing you disagree with. What do you agree with?
This is a far better plan than the Central Library Plan, which we litigated against and helped to derail. And if you have this kind of money to spend on this library, and particularly if you're willing to put more books in it, so that we have books more like we used to have, there are a lot of things that are good about this design.
So my final question to you, if you had 3 questions that you wanted to get asked and answered, can you just submit them in? 3 questions.
Well,
I want you to give me your top 3 questions, put it on a piece of paper, and submit them to us.
We have asked repeatedly for a census of the books in the numbers that they used to be before the Central Library Plan was concocted.
Okay.
And NYPL has refused to give that.
That's one question.
Okay.
Second question.
The second question is we would like to see the contracts that were requested to be seen with Booz Allen, both from the NYPL and from the BPL.
2.
And
That's your second question.
All right.
Third
well,
question.
Let's throw in the Queens Library, too, because they also had a contract with Booz and Company.
Okay. And number 3?
I have. I've
So
got
you
some,
only have 2. It's okay. You only have 2. You don't have to make up a third
well,
one.
I've asked who the internet providers, singular or multiple, are for the NYPL, and I did also want to find out about who their third-party. They have a privacy exception for third-party providers in their privacy policy, and I would like to get a list of all the third parties that they are concerned about.
All right. I thank you for your time today. I appreciate it, and thank you. And I want to get answers to your questions, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Councilmember King, I think you got Michael White to compliment the New York Public Library on a portion of this plan, and that is not insignificant. So thank you to everyone who was here today, and I wish everyone a very, very happy holiday, and look forward to this project being completed. Thank you again to all of the library staff who are here, who serve and protect the people who use the New York Public Library every single day. I know that their well-being is at the heart of what you do, and I believe with all of my heart that all of our library systems are protecting the people who use their libraries and not exposing them to any danger. So with that, we thank everyone, and this hearing is adjourned.